Perimeter soft. A soldier. Gay love story. Bravo 1. Do not push past the waterline. Hold the church lot. Bird inbound with 2 litters and a minor. Keep the lane open. My boot was already on the painted arrow when the radio said it like a law. I stepped back off the slick chalk line and lifted my palm to stop a pickup that wanted to become an ambulance out of sheer will. The driver, shirtless, frightened, brave in the wrong direction, met my eyes and let the wheel go soft. My name is Marcus Rivera, 24 specialist, Louisiana National Guard. I was 2 months out from a deployment my mother pretends not to know about, and 5 days into a hurricane response that had turned a New Orleans neighborhood into a lattice of brown water and bright kindness. We'd turned the St. Luke Lutheran parking lot into a landing zone. Cones, caution tape, flares we didn't light because wind still had opinions. The guard-high water trucks idled like domesticated dinosaurs on the far curb. My squad leader, Sergeant Daniels, ran a map with a grease pencil and the calm of someone who'd seen worse and refused to make a hobby of it. EMS staged under the basketball hoop. Navy corpsmen in borrowed ponchos sorted a folding table into a clinic that wanted to be more. The smell was rain, diesel, bleach, and that faint metal edge storms leave behind like a receipt. Copy, hold the lot, I answered, and the radio acknowledged in static that felt like a nod. The Jayhawk came in low over the live oaks, rotor wash-making confetti out of leaves that didn't ask to be art. I led with the wands, orange circles in a choreography we'd practiced in a field, and were now performing for people who needed the ending to be right. The helicopter kissed the asphalt exactly on the painted H like manners. The side door slid. A figure leaned out in rescue swimmer orange, helmet visor up, stubble rain bright. Eyes doing a quick total of everything and then breaking into a grin he did not apologize for. "Do not walk behind the tail," he called, voice clear without being loud. 2 litters, 1 pediatric, and a dog who thinks he works here. "Copy," I said, stepping into his world like I'd been waiting to. We moved the first litter, older man, eyes shut with exhaustion, oxygen lines straight as a promise, to EMS hands. The second was a woman who had carried a house on her back for too long. We let her not carry anything for 20 seconds and called it medicine. The kid, 6 maybe, held a stuffed blue dolphin that looked like it had participated in the storm. And the dog, a black mutt with female-level confidence, supervised. The swimmer dropped to the deck with the kind of balance you get when your day job is physics with opinions. He popped his helmet off, blondish brown, a little too long for regs, but not enough to be a problem. 26 by the file card in my head. Coast Guard AST by the harness, and the way the corpsman nodded to him like you nod to a regular at a diner that only serves emergencies. "Blake," he said, tapping his chest. "Carter." "Marcus," I said, tapping mine. "Rivera." "Hold lane stays honest." He smiled like we'd both remembered the same joke. "You good?" "I keep being," I said. It started as a line. It kept because it was true. When the bird lifted, the lot exhaled. Laundry flapped from church windows like prayer flags that had chosen secularism for the weekend. Daniels sent 2 trucks back to the senior center with water and MREs and 1 generator that had earned a reputation for lying. I walked the lane where civilians queued with plastic totes and worries, handed out N95s to people who thought masks were over, and told a teenager with a GoPro that the tape wasn't a suggestion. He liked me anyway, which is a miracle you don't document while it's happening. "Rivera," Daniels said, head tilt toward the church door. "Blake needs a Stokes and soft litter for what's left of the annex. You, me, and Carter will go. Do not wade past chest level. Current is lying." "Copy," I said, shouldered the Stokes basket, and found Blake already grabbing the far handle, like we'd rehearsed this somewhere I wanted to go back to. We moved into the street that had decided to be a canal for the afternoon. Boats hummed the wrong direction along Esplanade. A neighbour in a pirogue waved like he was passing on a sidewalk, and a grandmother stood on a porch steps arguing with the flood with her hands on her hips and magnolia blossoms in her hair. I wanted to sit at her kitchen table and take orders. Later. The annex had slumped, roof leaning, the waterline inside at the light switch. We found Mr. Baptiste halfway up a stairwell, CPAP on his lap, the machine plugged into the idea of an outlet. His daughter held a cooler full of something that was either insulin or hope. Blake talked like a person whose sentences wear life jackets. "Sir, I'm Blake. This is Marcus. We're going to lift you. Do not stand. Do not help. Helping is my job." Mr. Baptiste laughed dry and true. You sound like my Marie, he said. She'd been telling me that 50 years. Marie's right, Blake said. I'd like to be right with her today. We wrapped Mr. Baptiste in the soft litter, clipped into the stokes, and made stairs into sketch, into floor, into door, into water that greeted us with a slap and the taste of car keys. Blake took the tail without being asked. Boots finding invisibles like he'd grown up where Bayou meets duty. He probably had. We got the stokes into the high water truck, and Mr. Baptiste held my wrist for an extra second, because thank you sometimes needs bone. Wait, don't miss this, Blake said low as we waded back toward the annex. Left window, dog's nose. Do not break glass until I get the gloves on. Water's pushing, a nose, a paw, whining that had the shape of a question. We broke the pane with care, cut around, and the pit mix slid into Blake's chest like he'd been invented for this precise square of space. Blake laughed, held the dog like a promise, and the dog kissed his chin with the delicacy of a courtier. You're okay, bud, Blake murmured. Hands on my neck. That's right. He passed the dog to me like cargo we both believed in, and I put a tourniquet on my heart in case I died from how ridiculous I was about men who treated animals with respect. Back at the LZ, the son did a failed audition for Mercy. The next cell was coming. Radar on a borrowed phone said the sky had new hobbies. Blake's crew chief made circles with a finger in the international sign for "We can take 2 more." Daniels sent the right ones. Diabetic with a foot that had been putting off being listened to, and a pregnant woman who did not feel like walking down the weight of a world. Blake squeezed my shoulder as he jogged to the bird, a touch light enough we could both deny it if a colonel walked past, and heavy enough I half forgot how to breathe for one beat. You good? He tossed over his shoulder. I keep being, I called back, and felt stupid and sheer for grinning into rain. When the bird left and the lane settled into that post-rota hush, Daniels sent me with Private Nguyen to clear the gym. We found cots, wet quilts, a battered piano a volunteer could not be convinced to abandon, and a teen charging phones off a car battery like a deity. We carried 3 toddlers to nap. We moved that piano 6 inches to the left to satisfy the volunteer's soul. We reset cones by the drain that was trying to be a well. By late afternoon, the guard trucks started doing their pond skim across intersections, like the city had been remixed into a music video about hauling. We ran water to elderly couples and MREs to families with kids who wanted to trade the beef stew for anything with a cookie. We argued with exactly 2 men who thought boat meant license to ignore. We let one of them help carry boxes to his own living room so he could keep the story he needed. Store kindness like that. It spends well. Bravo 1. The radio came again in that voice that likes plans. Last lift before the band sets back in. Do not use flares. Wind is up. The Jayhawk ghosted back over the oaks, skids settling like patience. Blake hopped down. He looked more tired and more beautiful, and I am not proud of how obvious that sentence felt inside my chest. We're wheels up in 7, he said. We can take non-critical. You got a grandma who misses Baton Rouge and a cat with opinions? This is your slot. We had Mrs. Delacroix, 81, rosary like a metronome, and a tabby who let exactly no one touch him except Mrs. D and, apparently, Blake. The cat told Blake his secrets, and Blake told the cat same. We load-mastered them into seats. Daniels nodded like a man who doesn't want to name gratitude out loud in case it scares, and Blake lingered that extra second on the skid. Tonight, he said, casual in a way that meant anything but. Cafeteria at St. Luke's. I heard rumors about gumbo. Do not stand me up. Copy, I said. I don't know when copy turned into yes for me, or when do not turned into please, but it had. He flew. The sky swallowed the rotor beat. The lot put itself away by slow degrees. We got Mrs. Baptiste a cot by the choir robes. We plugged a space fan into a generator and moved air around as if we'd invented it. At sundown, the clouds stopped lying for a minute and gave us a strip of gold so smug I wanted to clap. The gumbo rumour was real. Church ladies with forearms like oak-ladled servings into paper bowls and told us how we were all too skinny and too dumb and too brave and exactly enough. Blake came in with his flight suit peeled to his waist and a t-shirt that had made regrettable decisions inside a harness all afternoon. He slid into the folding chair across from me with the tabby now asleep in the crook of his elbow because apparently we live in a universe where justice occasionally overperforms. What's your moss when the world isn't soup? He asked between bites. 11B turned 88M for this, I said. I carry what's heavy and try to know where I put it. You? AST, he said. I jump out of good aircraft so people can keep the part of their day that matters. Also, I cook breakfast like a religion. You good? I asked, because it had become a ritual that wanted a new place to live. I keep being, he said, and the tabby stretched and put a paw on his chest like an amendment. Wait, don't miss this, Daniel said from 2 seats down, voice low like a person pretending not to interrupt. Power truck says transformer near the annex is sparking. Do not go near the corner by Esplanade. CG is grounded for the next hour. We held. We are very good at holding. Blake and I walked the hall, checked on Mrs. D, who had decided she'd run the bingo when anyone remembered how to play, and sat near the stage where kids discovered the feedback mic and pretended to be famous. When night fully committed, EMS tucked themselves into corners with blankets and clipboards. Guard guys made coffee that could start a motorcycle, and the church turned into the city's smallest airport for sleep. Blake and I found the narthex where the sound of the storm came through with all the sharp edges sanded down. He leaned his shoulder to mine for a moment that could have been the rest of the night if radios were different. He smelled like salt, diesel, and clean laundry you get from other people's houses when your own isn't taking applicants. He touched his forehead to mine for 1 beat. PG-13, consent, the exact distance that makes doors unimportant, and then stepped back first like discipline had tenure. Still with me? He asked. Right here, I said. We didn't say tomorrow because tomorrow was a committee we weren't invited to. The storm band hit at 0200, short and dumb and violent. We moved cots, pans, pride. The power truck made lightning sound like a punchline. The cat decided he was an air raid siren, and then decided he was a blanket. Blake went back out with his crew when the ceiling let them. We got 2 kids with asthma whose inhalers had names. They always do. I labelled their spaces because labels are love after midnight. Morning found us with exhaustion like a sweater, and sun pretending it had always been here. We cleaned the lot like we'd been born with a broom in our hands. Blake came back in one more time with a box of batteries that looked like he'd stolen them from Zeus and a handwritten recipe for breakfast. Tacos he said he'd cook when the world remembered. Kitchens. He looked at me like you look at a place you want to rent. After this, he said, I'm out of air station for a month. Mobile. Then maybe Corpus. You? I shrugged like a man whose orders were folded in his duffel. Fort Liberty for a minute. Then over there. He nodded, like the world, and he had already had that part of the conversation. We write rules instead of plans, he said. Our department, I agreed. When the Red Cross goes back to white, you text here. When the river tries to remember my name again, I text on. He grinned, and it did a terrible thing to me I didn't mind carrying. He slid a Sharpie across the table and wrote on a Ziploc he handed me, for the kid who names it. Inside were 2 spaces, one in tiny, because he is someone who believes in the future of other people's lungs. I put the Sharpie in his flight bag without asking. Labels are love, I said. Copy, he said. And I liked what the word meant if you said it right. A week later, FEMA turned the lot back into a lot. Guard trucks went north to Lafayette where a creek had done something illegal. Blake's squadron got told to think about mobile like it was a vacation. We stood on the church steps drinking coffee that wasn't pretending to be diesel anymore. He wore a cap that made his eyes look like reasons. I touched the brim, and he let me. Which in our language is the same as letting a door close against rain while you stay. People think our work is rotor wash and MRE heaters, wands and wrist radios and boots that never fully dry. It is. It's also names and rules, and the way do not can be a lifeline if you say it on time and mean it with your whole back. Sometimes the safest place in New Orleans isn't behind a berm or under a roof. Sometimes it's the inch between 2 foreheads while the Jayhawk pauses above you, and a church decides it can be a city for one more day. The next storm will come. It always does. Someone will try to make a boat out of a door, and sometimes it will work, and sometimes it won't. Someone will name their inhaler something brave. The guard will hold lanes. The Coast Guard will make physics look like manners. He'll keep the water honest. I'll keep the perimeter soft. He'll ask, you good? And I'll say, I keep being. We'll hold the day where it needs holding. Red Cross chalked. Cones stacked. Yes.